The champagne glasses clinked as I stood before the wedding reception, my heart swelling with pride as I looked at my daughter Emma in her beautiful white dress. "I have a special gift for the happy couple," I announced, pulling out the deed from my purse. The room fell silent with anticipation. "Emma and Ryan, I'm giving you the seaside villa in Malibu. It's yours, completely paid for, to start your new life together." I placed the deed in Emma's trembling hands, watching tears of joy stream down her face. The room erupted in gasps and applause, guests whispering about the generous gift. But I noticed Margaret, Ryan's mother, stiffen in her chair. Her smile looked forced, and her eyes narrowed as she stared at the deed. Something cold passed across her face that made my stomach twist with unease. Later that night, as I was collecting my purse from the bridal suite, I heard hushed voices through the door. Margaret's voice was sharp and bitter. "That villa should have been put in your name, not hers alone, Ryan. We need to fix this." My blood ran cold as I heard her final words. "I'll make sure that house isn't hers for long." The morning after the wedding should have been filled with joy, but instead I found Emma sitting in her hotel room, still wearing her wedding dress, tears streaming down her face. My heart broke seeing my beautiful daughter looking so lost and confused on what should have been the happiest day of her life. "Mom, Ryan spent the night at his parents' house," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He said we had a fight about money, but I don't even remember fighting. We were so happy during the ceremony." I wrapped my arms around her, trying to comfort her while my mind raced. What could have possibly happened between the reception and now? They had seemed so in love during the ceremony, so excited about their future together. "What did you fight about exactly?" I asked gently, stroking her hair. Emma looked up at me with confused eyes. "He said I was being selfish about the villa, that I should have insisted you put it in both our names. But Mom, you gave it to me as my wedding gift. Why would that make him angry?" My unease from the night before turned into full alarm. Margaret's poisonous words echoed in my mind, and I realized the manipulation had already begun. 2 weeks later, I drove to the villa to check on Emma and help her settle in. The beautiful coastal property had been my pride and joy, and seeing Emma make it her home should have filled me with happiness. Instead, I found Margaret's car in the driveway again, the third time this week. Inside, Margaret was rearranging the living room furniture while giving Emma a lecture about proper home management. She barely acknowledged my presence, continuing to criticize Emma's decorating choices, and suggesting that Ryan should take charge of all the important financial decisions. "After all, dear," Margaret said to Emma with false sweetness, "men are naturally better with money matters. You should let Ryan handle the bank accounts and property papers." I watched Emma nod meekly, and my heart sank. This confident, intelligent woman I had raised was being systematically broken down. When I tried to speak up, Margaret shot me a warning look. Later, as I was leaving, I noticed Ryan hunched over papers at the kitchen table. When I glanced over his shoulder, I saw a bank document with his name being added to Emma's accounts. The signature at the bottom looked like Emma's handwriting, but something about it seemed off, too careful, too practiced. When I tried to warn Emma about what I had seen, she exploded with anger I had never witnessed before. "Stop trying to control my marriage," she shouted, her face flushed with frustration. "Ryan and Margaret are just trying to help me. Why can't you see that?" The transformation in my daughter was heartbreaking. The independent woman who had graduated with honors and built her own career was now defending people who were clearly manipulating her. Every concern I raised was met with accusations that I was jealous or interfering. "You gave me the villa, and now you want to control how I live in it," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "Maybe Margaret is right. Maybe you do have boundary issues." I tried to stay calm, but inside I was screaming. Margaret had poisoned my daughter's mind against me in just a few weeks. Every attempt at protection was being twisted into control, every warning into jealousy. As I left that day, I didn't know that Margaret had been secretly recording our conversation on her phone. I would learn later that she planned to use my interference as evidence against me in whatever scheme she was plotting. The distance between Emma and me grew wider each day, exactly as Margaret had planned. Weeks passed without a word from Emma. My calls went straight to voicemail, my texts remained unanswered. The silence was deafening and terrifying. Finally, unable to stand it anymore, I drove to the villa, my heart pounding with worry about my daughter. The electronic gate that had never been there before stopped me at the entrance. I pressed the intercom button, waiting anxiously for Emma's voice. Instead, Ryan's cold tone crackled through the speaker. "What do you want, Lydia?" he asked, not even bothering with basic politeness. "I want to see my daughter," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been calling for weeks. Is Emma okay?" There was a long pause before Ryan's response chilled me to the bone. "This isn't your property anymore, Lydia. Emma doesn't want to see you right now." The gate remained firmly closed. Through the bars, I could see the villa I had lovingly purchased for my daughter, now feeling like a prison keeping me out. How had things gone so wrong so quickly? The deed was still in Emma's name. I had made sure of that. But somehow, Ryan was acting like he owned the place. I sat in my car for an hour hoping Emma would appear, but the villa remained silent. The next morning, I called my lawyer in a panic. Something was seriously wrong, and I needed to understand what legal rights I had to see my daughter. What James told me made my blood run cold. "Lydia, someone has filed paperwork to transfer ownership of the villa," he said, his voice grim. "According to these documents, Emma signed the property over as a joint marital asset. But I have to tell you, something doesn't look right about these papers." My hands shook as I gripped the phone. "What do you mean?" "The signature looks forced, and the witness signature belongs to someone named Marcus Phillips. Apparently Ryan's cousin who works as a notary. This whole thing smells like fraud, but proving it will be challenging." I felt sick to my stomach. Not only had they manipulated Emma emotionally, but now they were stealing the gift I had given her. The villa that was supposed to represent her independence and security was being used as a weapon against both of us. "What can we do?" I asked desperately. "We need evidence of the forgery, and we need Emma to cooperate. Without her testimony, this will be nearly impossible to fight." But Emma wasn't talking to me, and I was beginning to understand that might be exactly what they wanted. The family dinner at Margaret's house felt like walking into a trap, but I had to try one more time to reach Emma. The entire extended family was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, all people who had known Emma since she was a child. Margaret stood up during dessert, raising her wine glass with a theatrical smile. "I want to thank Lydia for her generous wedding gift," she announced to the room. "It was so thoughtful of her to give the villa to Emma and Ryan jointly. What a wonderful way to start their marriage as equal partners." The room murmured appreciation while I sat in stunned silence. Margaret was rewriting history in front of everyone, making it seem like I had intentionally given the property to both of them. The entire family now believed this lie. "After all," Margaret continued, her eyes meeting mine with a cold smile, "what's family without trust?" I wanted to scream the truth, to tell everyone about the forged papers and the manipulation. But I had no proof. Margaret had played this perfectly, creating a public narrative that made me look like the unstable one if I protested. Emma sat quietly beside Ryan, avoiding my eyes completely. My own daughter was letting this woman destroy our relationship and steal her inheritance. When I managed to get a moment alone with Emma after dinner, I was shocked by her appearance. She looked exhausted and timid, nothing like the vibrant woman I had raised. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she had lost weight that she couldn't afford to lose. "Emma, sweetheart, are you okay?" I asked, reaching out to touch her arm. She flinched away from me, but not before I noticed a yellowing bruise on her wrist that she quickly covered with her sleeve. My heart stopped. Was Ryan hurting her physically too? "I'm fine, Mom," she said quickly, but her voice was hollow. "Ryan takes good care of me. Margaret helps me understand what marriage is really like." She defended them automatically, like she had been programmed with the responses. This wasn't my daughter speaking. This was someone who had been broken down and rebuilt in Margaret's image. As I walked to my car, I heard Ryan's voice shouting inside the house, followed by the sound of a door slamming. Emma's soft crying drifted through an open window, and I knew I couldn't walk away. Something terrible was happening to my daughter, and I was the only one who could save her. I turned around and marched back to the front door, my protective instincts overriding my fear. I pounded on the door until Ryan answered, his face red with anger and something that looked like guilt. "What the hell do you want now?" he snarled, blocking the doorway so I couldn't see inside. "I want to know why my daughter is crying," I demanded, trying to look past him. "And I want to know about that bruise on her arm." Ryan's expression turned dangerous. "You need to leave. Now. You're not welcome here anymore." Margaret appeared behind him, her face a mask of false concern. "Lydia, you're clearly having some kind of breakdown. Emma is perfectly fine. But your obsessive behavior is disturbing our family." She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Yes, I need security to remove someone from my son's property. She's becoming aggressive and won't leave." As I stood there waiting for security to arrive, the full scope of their plan became clear. They weren't just stealing the villa. They were destroying my relationship with Emma and painting me as an unstable woman who couldn't be trusted. "You've picked the wrong woman to underestimate," I said quietly, looking Margaret directly in the eyes. This was war, and I was going to fight back. The next morning, I hired a private investigator. If Margaret and Ryan thought they could manipulate and steal without consequences, they were about to learn how wrong they were. I had built a successful business from nothing, and I knew how to fight dirty when necessary. Within a week, my investigator brought me information that made everything click into place. Ryan's father had massive gambling debts that the family had been hiding for years. They were desperate for money, and my villa represented their solution. "Here's the interesting part," the investigator explained, spreading photos across my kitchen table. "The villa is being used as collateral for a loan they took out in Emma's name. They forged her signature on mortgage documents worth $3 million. My hands trembled as I looked at the evidence. They hadn't just stolen Emma's home. They had put her in massive debt that could ruin her credit and her future. The beautiful gift I had given her was now a financial weapon pointed at her heart. "There's more," he continued. "Margaret has been bragging to her friends about how they'll soon own that seaside property. She's already planning to sell it to pay off the family debts." The cruelty was breathtaking. They were willing to destroy Emma's life to save themselves. Using my old business contacts, I began gathering intelligence about Margaret's activities. What I learned made me sick with rage. She had been bragging at her country club about manipulating Emma and gaining control of the villa. She actually told people that Emma was too stupid to manage property on her own. My friend Patricia reported after attending one of Margaret's charity luncheons. She said it was lucky Ryan was there to take charge of the finances. The whispers were spreading through their social circle. Margaret was painting Emma as an incompetent child who needed constant supervision, while positioning herself as the wise mother-in-law saving the day. Every lie made it harder for Emma to maintain any sense of independence or self-worth. More disturbing was what my investigator discovered about the mortgage documents. The paperwork was already being processed at the bank, with Emma's forged signature authorizing loans she had never seen or agreed to. "They're moving fast," James warned me during our latest meeting. "If we don't stop this soon, Emma will be legally responsible for debts she never incurred. Even if we prove fraud later, unwinding the financial damage could take years." Time was running out, and Emma still wouldn't see me or take my calls. Late one night, my phone rang. Emma's voice was barely a whisper, shaking with fear and desperation. "Mom, can you meet me at the beach park?" I can't let them know I'm calling you." I drove through the empty streets with my heart pounding, terrified of what I might find. Emma was sitting on a bench overlooking the ocean, hunched over and sobbing. When she looked up at me, I gasped. The bruise on her wrist had spread, and there were new marks on her neck. "They made me sign papers," she whispered, falling into my arms. "Ryan said they were just insurance documents, but I saw the word mortgage before he pulled them away. Mom, I'm so scared. I don't understand what's happening to me." I held my broken daughter while she cried, my own tears falling onto her hair. The strong, independent woman I had raised was disappearing, replaced by this frightened shell who jumped at shadows. "I'll fix this," I promised her. "But you have to trust me now. Can you do that?" She nodded against my chest, and I felt a spark of hope. Then she pulled back with wide, terrified eyes. "Mom, there's something else. I'm pregnant." Everything changed in that moment. This wasn't just about protecting Emma anymore. It was about protecting my grandchild. Margaret discovered that Emma had met with me, and her reaction was swift and calculated. The next morning, she appeared at the villa with flowers and a concerned expression, playing the role of the caring mother-in-law perfectly. "Emma, darling, you look so tired," Margaret cooed, setting the flowers on the kitchen counter. "Let me make you some tea to help you relax." I learned about this later from Emma, who called me in a panic. Margaret had slipped something into the tea, something that made Emma feel drowsy and confused. By the time Emma realized what was happening, Margaret was guiding her to sign more bank documents. She kept saying it was just to update my address, Emma told me, her voice slurred and frightened. But I couldn't think clearly. Everything felt fuzzy. I rushed to the villa immediately, using my key that Emma had given me during our secret meeting. I found Emma barely conscious on the couch, with Margaret's car nowhere to be seen. Empty teacups sat on the coffee table, and there was a bitter smell in the air. "Emma, stay awake," I said, shaking her gently. "We're going to the hospital right now." Margaret had crossed a line from emotional manipulation to physical harm. She was drugging my pregnant daughter to make her compliant. The emergency room doctors confirmed what I had suspected. Emma had been given a mild sedative, something that could have harmed both her and the baby. But when Margaret and Ryan arrived at the hospital, they immediately went on the attack. "This is exactly what we've been talking about," Margaret announced loudly to the nurses and doctors. "Lydia has been harassing Emma for weeks. She's clearly having some kind of mental breakdown and is imagining things." Ryan nodded gravely. "My wife is pregnant and doesn't need this stress. Lydia has been making wild accusations and trying to turn Emma against our family." They were good at this, flipping the script so quickly that even I started to doubt myself for a moment. The medical staff looked between us uncertainly, unsure who to believe. "We're considering legal action for defamation," Margaret continued, her voice dripping with false sorrow. "It's heartbreaking when family members become unstable like this." But I had something they didn't know about: the recordings from my investigator, and now medical evidence of the drugging. Margaret thought she was playing chess, but I was about to flip the entire board. "Save your threats," I said calmly. "The truth has a way of coming out." Over the next few weeks, I began recording everything. I hired a tech specialist to install discrete audio devices in the villa during a routine maintenance visit that Emma had scheduled. Every conversation, every manipulation, every cruel comment was being captured. The first recording broke my heart. Margaret's voice was crystal clear as she spoke to Ryan in what they thought was privacy. "Once the deed is completely transferred and we have full control, she's disposable. Emma has served her purpose." Ryan's response was equally chilling. "What about the baby?" "Babies bond with whoever raises them," Margaret replied coldly. "Emma's too weak to be a proper mother anyway. We'll be doing the child a favor." They were planning to take my grandchild too. The villa was just the beginning. They wanted to control every aspect of Emma's life, including her child. The recordings revealed the true scope of their evil plan. I made copies of everything and stored them in multiple secure locations. Margaret and Ryan thought they were so clever, but they had no idea that every word of their conspiracy was being documented. The evidence was building, but I needed to be strategic about how to use it. I decided to give Margaret exactly what she wanted: a buyer for the villa. Working with my lawyer and private investigator, we created a fake investment company interested in purchasing oceanfront properties quickly and quietly. The bait was irresistible to Margaret. When my investigator, posing as a real estate agent, called about a cash buyer willing to pay above market value, Margaret practically salivated over the phone. "We can close quickly," she said eagerly. "The property is already in our family's name, so there won't be any complications." This was exactly the confession we needed. Margaret was openly admitting to having control of property that legally belonged to Emma. But we needed more. We needed Ryan involved too. "The buyers will want to speak with the actual owners," our fake agent explained. "Can you arrange a conference call with your son and his wife?" "Emma doesn't need to be involved," Margaret said quickly. "She's pregnant and stressed. Ryan and I handle all the important business decisions." Every word was being recorded, building our case piece by piece. The staged buyer meeting was perfect. My lawyer and private investigator played their roles flawlessly, presenting themselves as wealthy investors looking for a quick purchase. Margaret and Ryan walked right into our trap. "So you're the legal owners of the property?" our fake buyer asked during the recorded video call. "Yes," Ryan confirmed confidently. "My wife signed all the transfer papers. The villa is now joint marital property, and I have full authority to make decisions about it." "And your wife agreed to this sale?" the buyer pressed. Margaret leaned into the camera. "Emma is very young and doesn't understand property values. We're handling this transaction for her own good. She signed the papers but didn't need to know the details." There it was, a full confession of fraud, manipulation, and theft, all captured in high-definition video. They had admitted to forging Emma's signature, taking control of her property without her knowledge, and planning to sell it behind her back. Ryan even bragged about how easy it had been to manipulate Emma. "She trusts us completely. She'll sign anything we put in front of her." I had everything I needed to destroy them. While I was building my legal case, Emma went into early labor. The stress of the manipulation and drugging had taken its toll on her body, and she was rushed to the hospital at 36 weeks pregnant. I stayed calm on the outside while my heart was breaking. This was exactly what I had been trying to prevent. Margaret's cruelty was literally making my daughter and grandchild sick. The next few days were critical. Emma needed to focus on her health and the baby, but I also knew this might be my only chance to give her the evidence she needed to break free from Margaret's control. I sat by her hospital bed, watching her sleep fitfully. The pregnancy had been difficult, made worse by the constant stress and manipulation. Dark circles shadowed her eyes even in sleep, and her hands were thin from not eating properly. "You're going to get your life back," I whispered to her. "I promise." Before visiting hours ended, I slipped a small flash drive into Emma's hand, labeled simply proof. Everything was on that drive. The recordings, the financial documents, the evidence of fraud. When she was ready to see the truth, it would all be there waiting for her. Emma's labor was long and difficult. Margaret tried to keep me out of the delivery room, positioning herself as the concerned grandmother while treating me like an unwelcome stranger. Ryan paced the hallways, berating nurses and making demands like he owned the hospital. But when Emma's pain became overwhelming, she screamed through her tears, "Get my mother in here. I want my mom." It was the first time in months that Emma had chosen me over them, and Margaret's face turned white with rage. This wasn't part of her plan. She was supposed to be the important one, the person Emma depended on. I rushed to Emma's side, holding her hand as she brought my grandchild into the world. The baby was small but healthy, with Emma's beautiful eyes and a strong cry that filled the room with hope. As I held my new granddaughter, I whispered, "Your mommy is going to be free soon. I promise." Margaret and Ryan stood in the corner, whispering angrily to each other. They were losing control, and they knew it. But they weren't done fighting yet. Later that night, when Emma was finally resting, I noticed her hand close around the flash drive I had given her. While Margaret and Ryan were busy celebrating what they thought was their victory in owning the villa, my lawyer delivered a cease and desist order backed by criminal evidence of fraud. But I had one more surprise waiting for them. Unknown to Margaret and Ryan, I had set up Emma's social media accounts to livestream from a hidden camera during their business meetings. When they met with our fake buyers again to finalize the illegal sale, everything was being broadcast to Emma's thousands of followers. The internet exploded. People watched in real time as Margaret and Ryan casually discussed stealing property from Emma and manipulating a new mother. The comments poured in faster than anyone could read them. "This is disgusting. How can they steal from their own family? Someone needs to arrest these people. That poor girl and her baby." #Villa Scandal started trending within hours. Local news stations picked up the story, and suddenly Margaret and Ryan's faces were on television as examples of family fraud and elder abuse. Their reputations were destroyed overnight. Margaret's charity board expelled her immediately. Ryan lost his job when his company saw the videos. Their social circle turned against them as everyone realized what kind of people they really were. The public response was swift and merciless. The videos had been shared millions of times, with people expressing outrage at the greedy in-laws who had stolen from a new mother. Local news stations ran investigative pieces about family fraud, using Margaret and Ryan as prime examples. Margaret's face was everywhere. On social media, on the news and newspapers. The woman who had built her identity around social status and respectability was now infamous for all the wrong reasons. Her charity board didn't just expel her. They announced publicly that they were investigating whether she had misappropriated funds there too. Ryan's employer fired him after clients threatened to leave if they kept someone so dishonest on staff. His professional reputation was in ruins, and no reputable company would hire him now. But they weren't done fighting. In their desperation, they planned one final, desperate move. They would sue Emma for defamation, claiming she had deliberately lied about them to destroy their reputations. It was a stupid plan that would only make things worse for them, but desperation makes people do foolish things. They thought they could still win by playing the victim, claiming that Emma and I had orchestrated some elaborate scheme to frame them. They had no idea what was coming next. I had anticipated their defamation lawsuit and prepared accordingly. When their lawyers filed the papers, my legal team was ready with a counterattack that would end this once and for all. The villa had always been protected by a trust one had quietly established for Emma's future children. The deed that Margaret and Ryan had been fighting over was actually just a placeholder. The real ownership had been legally secured in an unbreakable trust fund for my granddaughter. Their entire scheme had been pointless from the beginning. They couldn't steal what was already protected by ironclad legal structures. Every forged signature, every manipulation, every cruel act had been for nothing. But more than that, I had documented their fraud so thoroughly that they were now facing criminal charges. The district attorney's office had opened an investigation based on the evidence I provided. Margaret and Ryan weren't just losing a civil case, they were going to prison. The bank documents they had forged, the illegal mortgages they had taken out in Emma's name, the theft of property. It all added up to multiple felonies that would put them away for years. Their lawyers advised them to plead guilty and hope for reduced sentences. The courtroom was packed with reporters and onlookers when the final hearing took place. Margaret tried to fake illness to stall the proceedings, dramatically clutching her chest and claiming heart problems. But the judge had seen all the evidence and wasn't buying her performance. Ryan threw his mother under the bus, claiming she had forced him to participate in the scheme against his will. "My mother is very controlling," he testified, trying to minimize his own role. "She made me believe this was legal." But the recordings proved otherwise. Ryan had been an eager participant, bragging about how easy it was to manipulate Emma, and talking about the villa like it was already his property. The judge listened to everything with increasing disgust. "I have seen many cases of family manipulation," she said finally, "but this level of malicious behavior toward a pregnant woman is particularly appalling." Margaret and Ryan were sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud, plus restitution for all the financial damage they had caused. The villa was permanently secured in the trust for my granddaughter, and Emma was finally free. As they were led away in handcuffs, I looked at them calmly and said, "You built your lives on lies. Now watch them collapse." The aftermath was swift and complete. Margaret and Ryan lost everything. Their house was seized to pay debts, their social standing evaporated, and their family reputation was destroyed forever. The debts from Ryan's father's gambling were exposed, showing the full scope of their financial desperation. Emma, now a new mother, moved back into the villa peacefully. The gates that had once kept me out were removed, and the house became a home again. She was slowly recovering from the trauma, but having her baby and her freedom gave her strength she hadn't felt in months. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she cried one evening as we sat watching the sunset from the villa's deck. "I should have listened to you. I should have trusted my instincts." "You were being manipulated by experts," I replied, holding my granddaughter while Emma rested against my shoulder. "What matters is that you're safe now, and you're strong enough to protect your daughter from anyone who tries to hurt your family." The healing would take time, but we had what mattered most: each other, the truth, and a secure future for the next generation. Emma never had to know that I had orchestrated Margaret and Ryan's downfall from the very beginning. Months later, the villa had been transformed back into the peaceful retreat I had always envisioned for Emma. Laughter echoed from the rooms as Emma played with her daughter, and the sounds of a happy family filled the space that had once been poisoned by Margaret's presence. I stood on the deck watching my granddaughter take her first steps across the wooden planks, Emma clapping and encouraging her with pure joy. This was what family was supposed to look like: love, support, and protection, not manipulation and theft. Love doesn't mean staying silent, I said to Emma as we watched the baby explore her safe, secure world. Sometimes protecting your child means burning bridges and building stronger ones in their place. A letter arrived that afternoon. From Ryan, written from prison. He was begging to see his daughter, promising he had changed and learned from his mistakes. The envelope was postmarked from the state penitentiary where he would spend the next 2 years. I walked to the edge of the deck and tossed the letter into the ocean, watching it disappear beneath the waves. Some gifts are meant to free you, not bind you to people who would destroy your happiness. The villa stood strong against the coastal winds, a fortress of love that would protect my family for generations to come.